gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on the dais Shri Rupesh Kohli, Executive Director, Testing RDSO.
A special good morning to several seniors that I see among the audience. Very good morning, sirs. I am Rupesh Kohli, like I was just introduced. I am currently looking after responsibilities as ED testing in RDSO. RDSO is the sole research design organization of the Indian Railways. The topic today that I have is slightly technical in its nature, but I'll try to be not getting into mathematics of it and other technicalities of it. I'll try and cover what we've been doing and what we are intending to do over the next couple of years or maybe a year to come. As you're all aware, the country and the infrastructure sector as a whole is very upbeat about the railways. Huge amount of capital investment, like the speaker before me, Prasad Saab, just mentioned and gave some figures. Huge amount of capital investment, much needed and being done regularly. We're expecting more to come in the budget to be presented, probably in a day or two. But the bottom line of it is that we need to roll wheels. So instead of getting onto the capex and the top view of it, I'll try and take you to the nut and bolt of it. How do we kind of ensure that new, better, faster, more efficient rolls happen on the Indian Railways? So that is what this thing is. I'm calling it a snapshot because, like I said, it's too technical for this thing. This basically will cover why do we do rolling stock tests and what is done in that rolling stock tests, what was happening so far, what's new about to happen and why is it supposed to happen. And just to give you a few pictures about some recent rolling stocks that we've already brought in and some which are coming in. Right, so what is tested and how is it tested? So essentially when you're testing a rolling stock, before a rolling stock is permitted to come, and I'm sure all of us would be taking the trains one day or the other, we need to be sure that, number one, it does not fall off the rails. So that's what we technically call derailments. So it should not be derailment prone. And the other thing is it should not uproot the rails. So that's the lateral force. So what we are looking at is the lateral forces and what we technically call the derailment coefficient. It's a technical thing. I'll not get into too much details of that, but that is what it is. And for all of us who are taking the trains, traveling, you would have distinctly noticed, if you have had the chance of taking the Vande Bharat, that the ride of the Vande Bharat is much smoother, is much better compared to the other trains that you've been taking. So that is another technical aspect that we look into, which is the riding index. And apart from these basic tests, there are other validation tests that happen on the rolling stock before the rolling stocks are certified for operations on the Indian Railways, because we are handling lives over here, and also we are handling significant amount of freight traffic. So we are we're taking care of the network and we are handling the entire capacities of the network. So we do different kind of tests. There are brake tests which are happening, which is called the EBD, emergency braking distances, the brake performances. There are some section-specific tests. You would have heard in the newspapers and come across clippings that Railways is increasing their speeds. So what is done for increasing those speeds? How do we certify that the section or a particular rake formation is fit for higher speeds? So there are section-specific tests. We are increasing the length of our trains depending on seasonal pushes in our traffic. So what happens technically to the coupler forces and other things? So those are checked. You would have heard about new locos being brought in. We will soon have the Siemens loco coming in. Probably January of next year, you will be seeing that loco on the track. So what are those tests which are there as part of the validation of those locomotives, those new rolling stocks? So that forms part of it. Then there is a lot of onboard equipment, as you are already aware. A lot of equipment which can cause interference to our signaling systems, to our wayside systems. So how do we check those interferences? All of that part of the test. And our tests begin at the design stage themselves. So when a new underframe is made, when a new coach is to be made, or a new loco is to be made, we do stress analysis and squeeze tests and check how rigid and how flexible or how firm that underframe design or the coach design is. So it happens at the design stage itself. So what we have been doing so far is a proven methodology, because everything that we have done, and one instance that we can kind of, which I give an example everywhere whenever I'm been asked to tell about our existing methodology, Indian Railways is probably the only railroad in the world which is running double stack containers on flat wagons. Everywhere in the world, it's on a well design, and because of the Indian Railways running it on flat wagons, throughput of our container trains, despite the limited length that we have, is still one of the best in the world. So that's an example of both engineering and the validation that has been done. And that validation has been cross-checked by multiple global agencies, and they've all found the system to be somehow being stable. We've gone on to, with dwarf containers, into even triple stack operations, which are now happening on the freight corridors. So the existing methodology is well proven. Like I said, I'll not get into too much technicalities of it, but with this, it is a methodology which has been evolved by the railways over time based on the experiences that we have. Like you are already aware, our country and the Indian Railways have peculiarities of their own. So the test methodology that had been adopted also had peculiarities which we factored in and developed that methodology so as to suit our track conditions, our running conditions, our operations, and the way that we operate our trains in conjunction with passenger and freight, both those traffic getting mixed. However, this has its own fallout. And because, like I said, it's a homegrown methodology, it's a methodology which belongs to the Indian Railways, and with more and more opening up, with more and more global rolling stock manufacturers coming in, and with more standardized products, rolling stock designs, which are functional abroad, which are working abroad, those being brought in, there was always a demand of the standards getting aligned to the international standards. And there was always this questions raised about what's working in Europe probably does not kind of meet the cut on the Indian Railways. And it's happened in the past. There are several examples of rolling stocks which were well plying in North America or in Europe or in other major railroads. And when they were tested under our test methodology, they failed to meet the cut. So because of all these instances and because of us opening up and being ready for global products to come in, we've worked over the last 2-3 years to switch over to what is generally called or technically called the EN 14363. Another important, before I move on to EN 14363, another important reason of switching it over and the reason for the second project that I'll briefly be talking about is that we do all our rolling stock validation tests on our existing revenue track. So wherever our original traffic is also moving, the freight as well as the passenger, those are also our test tracks. That's again a strategy which is not recommended, which is not followed in elsewhere. So that was another pinprick which was there, which was another thing that we've been working about, the organization has been working around. And that's the second part of the project I'll come to. But I'll come back again to EN 14363. EN 14363 is the European standard for dynamic behavior assessment of rolling stock. Europe also has a added sort of rider in their rolling stock that they have to ensure interchangeability between different European countries. So the same rolling stock needs to travel from Spain, from UK, from Germany, France, and all of these places. So they need to have interoperability. That is not very particular for us, but it's a standard that is being followed by the European railcar industry. So that's the standard that was chosen to be adopted for the Indian Railways also. Over the years, a significant amount of work has happened on this, and we have now made that switch over. So we have switched over to the EN 14363. We've developed our own standard. Remember, we have a different gauge compared to Europe. Europe follows the standard gauge. We have the broad gauge. So these standards needed to be adopted for the broad gauge. So we've done that exercise, and we brought our testing systems, our validation systems, our acceptance criteria, all in line with the EN 14363 standards. And these are the standards in which all new rolling stocks, which will be coming in shortly, are going to be tested. So that is this thing. It has large amount of technical advantages of making that switch over. Technically, like we will more be aligned with international practices. Apart from that, there are technical advantages in terms of the data points being more statistical, more scientific statistical method being followed. And there are different other technicalities which we can probably discuss at some more different leisure. The second important project that Indian Railways has been taking as far as introduction of the new rolling stock is concerned is again a very long going project. It's been happening for quite couple of decades, if not more, is also setting up a dedicated test track. So like I said, we briefly covered that we were doing it on our revenue tracks, interrupting our traffic and doing these tests. So a dedicated test track is now being getting built. It's being built near Jodhpur and in Northwestern Railway. It's a dedicated facility. Once it's built, we will have one of the biggest and most elaborate dedicated test track facility in the world. We will only be a few kilometers shorter than the American test track facility at TTCI. But apart from that, apart from the TTCI facility, this will be the world's biggest facility which will be available. It is going to be an integrated test facility. There are also plans of also developing a parallel standard gauge dedicated test track facility in the same facility. So this will be the only facility which will have both standard gauge testing as well as broad gauge testing. It's already coming up. End of this year is the PDC for it getting commissioned. We've already begun to do some initial tests on it, and it's being custom designed based on the EN requirements and for other things. This is just a layout of it, adds to around 65 kilometers, specifically made for testing of the rolling stocks and for testing them in as adverse a condition as they can possibly come across during their operational lives. A few pictures of what goes into these testings. There's something called the instrumented wheel sets, which become part of it, and we actually measure actual forces coming on the rail wheel levels. So this is just a picture in sense of what is the change in terms of the instrumentation that's happening. The advantages, some good, some not so good, but mostly good. And they are, like I said, we will get aligned to the international standard. We'll have much better refined methodology, much deeper statistical analysis. Operationally, we will be that much more efficient. There are certain technicalities which it's a matter of debate, but if they could be extrapolated, there could be some not so good issues as well. Because for every of these tests, we will require instrumented wheel sets. There is going to be a setup time. It's going to be a more elaborate. Today, my working practice is that I can take any rolling stock and start testing in it. My preparatory time is slightly less. I'll be able to pick up and do validation much faster. But there was going to be an investment barrier in terms of the new methodology of the instrumentation being in place before the test can happen. I'll come to the last part of my presentation, just a few photographs to share for you in the recent rolling stocks that we have brought in and some which are coming in. Vande Bharat version 2 was brought in, and like you already know, there are more than 50 train sets now, Vande Bharat sets now in operations. It has caught the fancy of the nation, and it's a fantastic product. And having tested it up to 180 myself and been on that cab when it was taken to 180 kmph, I can vouch for its riding comfort. At 180 kmph, people who were testing it, including myself, we were standing in the cab of that locomotive with nothing, with holding on to nothing ourselves. The video that Honorable Emma Saab has tweeted a number of times of a tumbler full of water, not spilling a drop of it, was a video that was taken by the testing team, and it's been shared everywhere. It's a fantastic product, and during the testing, we could come out in terms of the characteristics that they have. The red coach that you see at the top is the new narrow gauge coaches for the Kalka-Shimla Hill Railway. You will, starting this winter, you will have these rakes plying, and it's made on the Swiss design, and it's again a fantastic product. We have done large number of metro certifications, and this push-pull concept, or the Amrit Bharat like it's called now, those are another coaching products that have come in. Coming up, you would have all be aware that we have Vande Sleeper coming up shortly. It's currently in our parlance, it is still being called Vande Sleeper. I'm sure it's going to have another name for it, but that's what's coming up. Vande Metro is another thing that's coming up. Vande Metro we expect within this fiscal. It was supposed to come up, but it is expected by February, March that we should actually be rolling them out. ICF is rolling out. Another product that just been rolled out by RCF at Kapoothara is a cargo liner, which has cargo at the bottom part of it and passengers traveling at the top of it. They'll become part of our passenger operations. So that's another coaching product that's coming up. And I've just listed a couple of them. There are 7, 8, 10 more which are in the pipeline, which are under manufacture. So, but I've chosen only those which are just about to ripe off in the next maybe 3-4 months. On the freight side, Huge amount of new rolling stocks again coming up. We have recently finished trials of the of this what is called the BC8 TIC wagon, which enables carrying an SUV, a higher height freight car in 2 tiers. So that was a restriction in the earlier autocar design. So this has now been certified. It's already certified at 100 for the DFCs and for limited routes which permit this height of wagon. Multiple options in terms of coil carrying, in terms of this thing, and in the center you see testing photograph of the triple stack that is being done. There are different other products coming up. RoRo and all of those have got certified. A large number of freight products which are getting certified and which are kind of coming up in months to come. So that's about it. I am sorry if I got too technical about it. Try to sort of keep myself away from the technicalities, but would be happy to take any questions. Thank you so much.